Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this Canada CPG 101. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe because then you will get notified when all of our webinars go live onto our YouTube channel. I'm really excited. Thank you so much to the NielsenIQ team because they are bringing us some probably never before seen data for early entrepreneurs about what is actually going on with Canada overall. No dumb questions here, or they're all dumb questions from people like me who don't know about Canada, but we desperately want to because it comes up all the time. You're our friends, our neighbors, and you have some great retailers. We want to know about them. So this, I think, is for a combination of entrepreneurs in the US who are Canada curious and also for Canada entrepreneurs who are just really interested to kind of revisit that overview. So we've got Francis, who is going to take us through a lot of really cool data from NielsenIQ, and then we're going to move over to Kyle Marsham from the brokerage Marsham, and they're going to talk a lot about go-to-market strategies, what's the retailer landscape like, so really much more from an operational perspective. We're going to be going fast and furious through these slides, but don't worry, if you registered on Eventbrite, you will get them emailed to you. Francis, do you mind taking over, introducing yourself, and getting us started here?
Totally good with that. So thanks for the introduction, Daniel. And like Daniel said, we've got a lot of slides. I first selected like 200, brought it down, and then Daniel said, this is still too much. So listen, if you're looking for more information, please do not hesitate to reach out. I know for some of the American brands or even Canadian brands, there's a tool down there called Bicer. We don't have that in Canada. We've just launched a new tool called Discover for Emerging Brands. So we call it DEB. Deb's a nice lady. Listen, just scan that QR code, then someone from my team will get back to you. We've got SMB pricing. We've got things figured out. It's very similar to what Bizer does. It's just not the same platform. So basically, I'm NielsenIQ. I've been with the company for 25 years, straight out of university. I first worked with retailers here in Montreal. Maybe you can tell it from my accent. English is not my first language. Then work with Quebec-based clients, Molson, Agropur, Keurig, Windsor Salt, FHP. Now I'm managing our relationship with small and medium business in Canada. That's why I'm part of this webinar today. I've got a team of like 10 people across the country that can help small brands understand what's going on here, but also everywhere around the world. I'm also responsible for the Montreal office where I am today, and strategic initiatives, Beval, Pet, Beauty, and our government business. I lead a lot of our contacts with different associations, such as Startup CPG, CHFA, CL, CPMA, Plant-Based Foods of Canada. Basically, what I'm trying to do with my team is forge partnerships across the sector to help all parties grow. I want to start with the presentation. So if you're not familiar with Canada, from a population perspective, it's way smaller, but you probably all know that, right? It's a tenth of the United States population, but it's growing faster. And it's growing faster because we've got more immigration coming through Canada. We've got long-term immigration and temporary, basically students coming to Canada. So you see on the right, that immigration explains why a fertility rate is lower, family size is bigger, median age is lower. You typically immigrate at a younger age. So that influences all the numbers on your right. Nearly 1 in 4 people in Canada are now immigrants. It's the highest proportion in 150 years. It's the highest of the G7 countries. It's in the top 20 countries in the world. So a lot, well, by 2050, all of the growth from the population will be from immigration. And the vast majority of that immigration right now is visible minority, at 71% of recent immigrants being from invisible minority. It's interesting, if you come to Montreal, if you come to Canada often, by provinces, it is different groups. You've got Chinese and in BC, you've got Chinese, South Asians, and Filipinos in Ontario. And in Quebec, you've got French-speaking immigration, people from Haiti, people from the Maghreb countries in Africa. So we've got different immigration patterns, which makes the country even more interesting. Like I said, different immigration. If you compare that to the US, visible minority is actually bigger in the US because of Hispanic, Latino, and Black. And like I said, this is totally different immigration in Canada, with South Asian now leading the group. But Filipinos are also fast rising in Canada. And then you've got Black immigration, French speaking in Quebec, and from the Caribbean and the Toronto region. So very interesting if you look at how population is changing and how retailers and brands can actually get some growth. You have to be aware that your growth is most likely to come from immigration in Canada. Like I said, immigrants are younger, they've got higher income, they are part of bigger households, and they also have more kids, more likely to have kids. So again, it is an interesting portrait for your typical consumers in Canada. That immigration, what it's doing is, if you look at the pyramid age, we're actually, like I said, younger in Canada. Millennials are now more important than boomers, and Generation Z will put also pressure on that. So the market is changing. Super interesting from an SMB perspective, from small brands. You go from a boomer mentality of like being very loyal to brands to like millennials looking at brands to fulfill a need. So we're totally more disloyal and less loyal from a consumer perspective. Super interesting to see millennial having a big influence in categories and brands right now in the Canadian market. And again, I had a few slides on that. If you need more information, don't hesitate to reach out. We're seeing the same thing in the US. Prices have like massively increased. What cost $100 a year ago, 2 years ago, will now cost you $127. But this is very similar to what we're seeing in Europe and in the United States. What we're seeing right now on your right is prices have started going down slightly for some departments. So we're looking at food here. I have more information on non-food if you're looking for that. You've got departments that are still growing, prices are still increasing, but we see prices coming down in Canada. There's a big push right now on discount. We're still having like a lot of strapped consumers, a lot of people trying to save money on CPG, and that's having a very positive impact on discount stores. I know Kyle will talk about like the different banners, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But if you look at it from like a group perspective, ethnic stores are growing the fastest. Ethnic stores in Canada are known for a destination for cheaper produce, cheaper meat. Dollar stores are growing 10%. And again, I know Kyle will talk about it, but it's a different portrait here. It's dominated by one brand, Dollarama, with close to 2,000 stores, and that's growing 10%. Online, very underdeveloped compared to the US, but growing fast as people are migrating there to find good deals. Grocery discount, we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. Mass merch here is Walmart, growing 6%. Warehouse clubs here is Costco, growing 4%. So discount in general is growing 10% in in Canada. My apologies for that. It's tougher for drugstores. It's tougher for conventional grocery stores, and it's also difficult for health food stores. Typically, they're a second destination for fulfilling your needs, and they're like Canadians are making choices and going there less often. If you're looking at grocery stores in general, this is like grocery stores, conventional and discount, more important than what we're seeing in the US. So if you're coming to Canada, you're not going to knock on Walmart's door first. You're going to work with Loblaws, Sobeys, or Metro or Save-On groups out west. Grocery stores is 50% of your CPG sales compared to 37% in the US. Mass merch, still one banner, 15% of the market, less developed than what we're seeing in the US, but growing at gaining 0.9 share. Warehouse clubs, more important. Costco is actually more important to the Canadian market than Sam's Club and Costco are to the US market. Drugstores is very developed in Canada with like brands like Shoppers Drug Mart and Jean Coutu in Quebec with high number of stores. And they're not doing well just because they're typically conventionally priced. So their consumers are deciding to buy less at drugstores. Dollar stores, I talked about it. We're in a position of having only one retailer in Canada, and then C stores is less developed in Quebec. What we're seeing right now is interesting because it's probably the most activity we are seeing between stores right now. 69% of Canadian consumers are switching stores to reduce their expense, and 30% of Canadians are shopping around to save more money. And they've got like Canadians, and especially people in Quebec, but we're not going to talk about that now. Canadians are very much promotionally focused. 40% of Canadians will stock up when their preferred brand is on sale. 40% of Canadian consumers will buy whatever brand is on promotion, and that's driven by your younger consumers, by the way. Then there's a strong interest for private label. We'll skip that section, but private label is a little bit less developed than what we're seeing in the US, but it's gaining more momentum. If you're looking at how discount stores are performing in the market right now, it is not the lower revenue brackets that are growing that channel right now. It is the highest income that are visiting discount stores more and driving more purchases out there. So it's all Canadians basically that are looking for ways to save. Only 19% of Canadians are telling us that they can spend freely. So you've got like 80% of your consumers that are looking at how they spend dollars. And retailers have heard what Canadian consumers are looking for. You've got a new concept here. You probably saw that on LinkedIn. That's a new concept from Loblaws. 3 stores. It's called No Name. Maybe a marketing stunt. I'm not sure. There's still only 3 stores out there. It's all yellow. It's 1,000 items. No dairy, no meat, frozen, a little bit of perishables. Honestly, I've visited 2 of them. Not a big fan, but I could see why there could be a market for that. More interested in what other retailers are doing with discount. This is a recent Freshco open in Alberta. A lot of focus. I would say 50% of the store is dedicated to the perimeter categories, just not typical of your discount stores. And my last example is a Walmart open in Montreal. There's a few of them in Canada right now. I'll be honest, I don't know if that's a concept very similar in the US, but it's basically the closest thing you can get to an hypermarket or an hypermarché in France. It's got the feeling of a conventional store with discount prices. It's got a full ready-to-eat section. That picture in the bottom there, it's got a lot of local brands and they're identified. Got a butcher, a big bulk section. So again, it is a very nice store. It doesn't look like it because there's no consumers in my pictures, but it's very busy, and that's in downtown Montreal. I know that Kyle will also talk about that, but I did mention that ethnic stores are growing the fastest. We're seeing a 10 points penetration gain over the last 2 years of ethnic grocery stores. Of course, our like big immigration numbers are probably influencing that, but we're looking at like 100 new stores in the past 10 years, with T&T leading the pack. T&T is an Asian supermarket. In fact, they've opened one in California lately. Adonis is focused on Middle Eastern clients, mostly developed in Quebec. You've got Namaste Supermarket Indian Foods around Toronto. And you've got like a lot of good examples of what ethnic grocery stores. And you can notice like we've got H Mart here, which is very popular in the US. But we're targeting like there's no Latino grocery stores in Canada. There's a few like small independent stores, but not chains. So big opportunity there for some brands. And I again know that in the next section we'll talk about that. I did mention that health food stores are down versus a year ago. That being said, penetration levels are stable. Got close to 10% of Canadians visiting health food stores. Got a list of like the biggest banners there. I intentionally didn't pick Whole Foods because you know about it, but there's Toe in Montreal, Avril in Quebec, Big Carrot in Toronto, and in Western Canada, Healthy Planet in Ontario, goodness me, across the country. So you've got good examples of destinations for health food stores in Canada right now with stable penetration. And the challenge there and the opportunity, I would say, is to bring consumers back to these stores. I see Avril doing a lot of promotion right now and using a lot of its private label to bring consumers back to its
Francis,
stores.
Francis, where do you shop? Where do you and your like, your family
It's
members
so
or your
funny you
friends shop?
mentioned that. I live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm stuck going at a conventional stores. But I'll be honest, my partner is kind of cheap. So he's forcing me to go to a discount. So I go to Maxi and Super C, and I will go to Avril. Avril is really my second destination. So quick in and out, I go to a conventional stores. Big baskets, I'll go to a discount stores. Then when I need organics and like gluten-free products, I really like Avril. So I've got like 3 stores that I visit a lot. I actually do
Okay.
not buy a lot of CPG online, and I'm not the only one. I buy like gluten-free pasta online, but I don't buy perishables. Online is still underdeveloped in Quebec, sorry, in Canada. It's only 10% of your CPG categories, where in the US it's 19%, but it's growing 15%. You see, like the fastest growing categories right now are with like non-food categories.
Perfect. And I just want to remind everybody, if you want to connect with Francis and the team, I've got the link in the chat here. You'll be able to talk to them about getting data on all these retailers, all these categories, as deep as you want to go. And I mean, this is really amazing info.
And Kyle
So
has a lot of like that information in this presentation too. So
yeah. And also, anyone in the chat, please drop in where you shop if you're in Canada. We're all very curious. All right, back to you, Francis.
yeah. So if I did this webinar 6 months ago, I would only show you red. And I think that was very similar in the US, which was surprising. There wasn't any unit growth in Canada, even though we've had it, like we 1 million new Canadians joined the country, the population last year. Because of immigration, we added 1 million Canadians, but still it wasn't enough to fuel growth in Canada. Right now, in the past 6 months, we've seen sales pick up. And if you're in like a small brand in the grocery category, it's actually good news. The vast majority of food departments are growing in the by units in Canada right now, with fruits and perishables, along with fresh meat and deli meat. What people are doing basically is they're spending a lot more time in the kitchen. It is 47% of Canadians that told us that they cook a lot more because they're going less to restaurants and they're planning their lunch to save money. So that's having an impact. And it's interesting because it's having an impact on like dry pasta, pasta sauce. Why? Because people don't feel like doing complicated meals all the time. So they'll go for like easy solutions to it. Some people don't know how to cook. So if you're like trying to understand what's happening in the Canadian market, a lot of people are spending a lot more time in the kitchen. That's interesting right now. I'm going to finish that looking at the different provinces. And again, a lot more information available. But if you're looking at Atlantic Canada, basically tell yourself you're looking at an older population, looking for value. And it's if you're looking at the categories, you totally see what I'm talking about, like diabetic test meters, stuffing mixes, food that you would typically see for like under older consumer base. And you look at your right, mass merch are very important, promo are very important, and that's where you see the most activity around private label in Canada. So older, less revenue in Atlantic Canada. I could talk about Quebec for like an hour. Very distinct market with different tastes, very focused on European needs. You've got like Oriental fondue products, 95% of sales done in Quebec. Meat pies, 90% of sales in Quebec. Veal couscous, that's immigration, and so on. Very focused on grocery, very focused on drug because of Jean Coutu. Underdeveloped in mass, very highly developed on promo, and private label is less developed in
I
Quebec.
wonder, Francis, I'm just curious because Western Europe, including France, those are the highest percentage promo markets that I've ever seen. I've spent time there. Just
Yep.
everybody that I know, that's what you do. You just go to the store and just load up on all the stuff that's like 2 for 1 that week, and you only buy it if it is. Do you think it's part of that culture coming that like people come and then they expect that? Because there are people who have immigrated or who
Yeah.
just like have that culture. And you also mentioned just like the heavy amount of new consumers coming from immigration.
Yeah, listen, if you're talking to the industry, Quebec consumers are the cheapest of all Canada. We really like promo. Not sure there's a link for Europe. Uh, my family's been here for 400 years, so my links to Europe are like totally gone. But there's a different way of seeing things. Immigration will also play on that. A Chinese or South Asian consumer will buy differently from a Middle Eastern consumer, which are typically more cheap. So it fits well in Quebec, let's say. So it's kind of interesting if you start digging into the numbers.
And just compounded by the inflation, obviously, where everyone's like, yeah,
Totally,
let's buy on deal now. Let's quit
totally.
messing around with just the expensive stuff.
Ontario is your biggest province. It's also the first destination for immigration. Toronto is the most cosmopolitan city in the world. More than 50% of its population is immigration. Big share of discount, big share of ethnic stores. A big share of mass merch. Grocery is underdeveloped. And it's funny, if you look at the overdeveloped categories, all driven by immigration, or basically. If you're looking at the prairies, I could split Alberta from Mansask, but just for the matter of time, you've got your fastest growing population from families in the prairies. They've got more babies, bigger families, different immigration patterns, and a high focus on discount because of families and millennials. And then you see that in the overdeveloped categories. Mass is very important. Like I said, discount is important. And then BC is very well, not very similar to California, but the mindset is the same, with a healthy population, more focused on health and wellness. But it is an older population than California. It's got different immigration patterns, I think, more Chinese immigration in British Columbia, less reliant on promo. And then you see that overdeveloped, you do see the impact of Chinese immigration in these overdeveloped categories. Again, less tempted to go on promo, but still 49% of sales done on promo in BC. So basically, just want to finish that there. Our population in Canada is growing faster than the US. It's driven by immigration. Our immigration is different, and it's different by province. And if you're coming to Canada, do consider like Quebec as French speaking. I know Kyle will talk about it. There's laws around launching products in Quebec. I always use the same example. In Quebec, 80% of the population only will speak French the vast majority of the time. 55% of the population will only understand French. And if you're talking to my mother-in-law about the chain of stores called Edible Arrangements, don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but they make like fruit bouquets or something like that. If you say Edible Arrangements to my mother-in-law, she has no clue what you're talking about. In Quebec, Kentucky Fried Chicken is called Poulet Frit Kentucky, and Staples is called Bureau en Gros. So there's like, you've got to invest time to come to Quebec. When you do that, people actually appreciate that. Got a cautious consumer, more than what we're seeing in the US. We've got like a larger proportion of cautious consumers, and it's driving the population to make choices to save money. Rising food prices remains the top concern for like both population. And Canadians are also nervous about the possible impacts of tariffs. I didn't talk about it at all, just because we don't have data to talk about it. I've got opinions, but I'm not like, I would prefer to have data to talk about it, to be honest. And then the industry is different. We've got a concentrated trade environment. We've got 5 retailers controlling 70% of the market. E-com is less developed, but it's growing. And we've got a rise of ethnic Canadian grocery chains. Private label is smaller than what we're seeing in the US. 50% of sales are done on promo. So it's not an easy market, but there's good growth potential out there. You've got a young consumer base that are looking for different brands to fulfill their needs. You've got immigration coming into consideration. So, and it's easy to only talk to, well, it's easy and it's difficult, but you only talk to 5 retailers, so it makes it a little bit easier. And then Kyle is totally way more positioned to talk about that. So honestly, I would pass it over to Kyle at this moment if there's no questions, Daniel.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe while Kyle is loading up his part of it, maybe I can just add, I just thought it was super interesting. The thing about, I mean, Gen Z being a heavier percentage of the market, I think probably creates a lot of opportunity for brands
Yep.
from our community, especially we have so many diverse founders and products that are aimed, or at least, leverage people's heritage. I feel like, because especially probably some of the bigger retailers, the grocery stores, are worried about losing consumers to some of the ethnic grocery stores, products that do speak to more people. Probably there's a lot of opportunity for you to be pitching those to a lot of stores right now. So all of that was super interesting to me. So thank you, Francis, a lot for that. And also, so just before we pass over to Kyle, Francis, I just wanted to ask, thank you for giving us that amazing data-driven overview on Canada and the population and the trends. Can you also just tell people like what NIQ does? Like, what typically do people come to you for? And I'm going to drop one more time the link here if you want to connect with their team. By the way, like, they will be nice and give you guys sometimes sneak peeks at your data and like the category for free. Take them up on that. It is amazing. So I'm putting the link here. I really recommend connecting with them.
So we basically work with all grocery chains. We do not have the best coverage for health food stores. We're starting to work with ethnic grocery stores. We work with Walmart. We work with all grocery, with all drugstores. So small brands are coming to us to understand basically what's happening in the market, because we've got a coverage. Our coverage is 92% of the Canadian sales. So we've got a good coverage, and we can help you understand who are your who would be your consumers if you come to Canada. So basically, you want to understand market trends, potential consumers, give us a call. We'll help you.
All right, perfect. I just dropped that link. I put it into bit.ly, bit.ly/CPG NIQ Canada. Easy. All right.
Perfect. Thank you,
Francis,
sir.
thank you. Kyle, I think people are very, very eager to see what you've got for us here, given all the experience you have helping so many brands in this market. Marsham, which is one of the, epic brokers in Canada. Kyle, let's do this.
Let's do it. You guys see my screen all right?
Yes, perfect.
Cool. So I see a lot of Canadians in the chat. This presentation is definitely tailored to maybe American or other markets coming into the Canadian grocery industry. So keep that in mind. I apologize if I leave out some provinces, but they are equally as important as Ontario, BC, and obviously Quebec. Thank you so much for having me. I've been in this industry my entire life, actively, working in the industry for 15 years. I started out, demoing at a local grocery store. I still remember it. I was selling Amy's pizzas, demoing. I think I sold like 50 in one day, and it was like the best day of my life, right? And that really got me hooked into the industry. Just some quick things. I launched a platform to do that just really helps set, some of that foundational stuff for founders, for brokers, for retailers. You can go check it out. It's a software solution for management. And then I'm the executive vice president of marketing at Marsham. And just to give a little bit of background on Marsham is, we're one of the largest natural food brokers. So we generally only work with better for you brands. We've worked with hundreds of brands over the years. We sold the first Cliff Bar in the Canadian market. We still represent them today, even through acquisitions. Kettle Chips, Blue Diamond. We just launched Feastables into the Canadian market. So I've seen, from all angles, how to go to market, how those legacy brands did it, how you could do it today, the nuances involved, the cost of doing business, how interesting and exciting it is to launch in the Quebec market, how brands evolve out of Western United States and into Western Canada. So super excited to be here and walk you guys through, what I hope to be extremely valuable. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Francis, you did an excellent job here. So I'm just going to, the only thing I would call out is when you're thinking about entering the Canadian market, we kind of talk about it in 3 regions, right? When we say Eastern Canada, we're really focusing in on that Eastern Canada, Ontario market. We talk about Quebec, and Western Canada is kind of being Vancouver, British Columbia, and then everything else kind of falls afterwards in terms of how you would go to market. You would never launch in, necessarily Calgary or Halifax or anything like that. And there's a few specific reasons why. I'll scan over this. Just the big thing here for a US brand coming into Canada is how close we live to the US border. So that, there's some efficiencies there, and it's important to take note of. And then the population disbursements between Eastern, Western, and Quebec, right? Ontario is extremely important when you're building out your strategy, followed by Quebec, and then BC is third. However, the interesting thing about the Western Canada is they over-index on health and wellness consumption of products. So bars, for example, they eat more bars in Western Canada and drink more kombucha than they do in Ontario. So, there's some nuances with categories and that type of thing. I'm not going to dive into this either, except for equal prominence French, English. If you're launching into Quebec, you need to have a Quebec specific strategy, right? Your social strategy needs to respect their unique culture. Your promo strategy, your trade spend strategy, your banners in store, all of that stuff you should almost look at it as French first, English second when you're launching to that market. And too often we see just basic collateral going into market, the same stuff you're using in Western Canada, in Quebec, and it doesn't really fly. The product doesn't perform very well. And just as a rule of thumb, you get more French regulated as you get closer to Quebec. So in Western Canada, you can get away with maybe some just English only collateral, flyers, that type of stuff. And then as you get closer to Quebec, it's extremely important, and you can get fined, and there's some nuances. I saw a comment, how do I get it translated? Find an expert that can translate. Don't go to Google. I've seen horror stories where like someone's translated turkey and it turned out to be like dead horse when they translated or something. So like you got to be a little bit careful when you're doing that stuff. The other thing is planograms are rarely enforced. So it's a franchisee model for the most part. So you can get very scrappy. So if you're working with a broker or a sales team in the Quebec market, you can do a lot of backdoor selling, get your products listed that way. It's very much a feet on the street type of mentality, and you can pay to play. In Ontario and the rest of the market, you can't really do that. It's frowned upon, it's enforced. So you can, $25 gas card, or like give a coupon here or whatever, and get a lot out of it in terms of, driving velocity and volume for your business. And like I said, the last point here is super important. Like, don't go into the Quebec market without some sort of unique marketing strategy to respect the Quebec culture, because you'll just get lost. 3 main differences for that we reiterate all the time. Market size, extremely important. Generally speaking, if you're launching a brand into Canada from the US, you're never going to be more than 10% of your US business. So if you're doing 100 million, you'll do 10 million, right? There are some exceptions to that. We have a few brands we represent in, alternative milk, and then some situation bars where they over-index on that rule. So they're doing like 15%, 20% of their US volume. Number 2 is bilingual packaging, equal prominence. So do your research, make sure you're educated on the packaging requirements. Super, super important. Work with a partner that understands that. That can get you in a lot of trouble. A lot of retailers won't even work with you. GS1 certification is super important too. Most of the retailers have to go through GS1 for barcode regulations and attributes and that type of thing. So just make sure you walk before you run, just with a few of those nuances. And then what's interesting too, if you try to picture similarities in Canada and the US, right? Ontario is very much like New York. And we actually had a US manufacturer go into the Quebec market, and how it's run with that franchisee, very open market kind of thing, also suggested that it's got kind of this New York selling vibe to it, where, Western Canada, like Francis was saying, it's very much like, California, Western United States. What's interesting is we go to Expo West every year. I've been going for 12 years. I'm actually missing it this year. I'm super sad. But a lot of the trends come out of California. You'll go there and you'll see mushrooms. And then like 5 years later, some like mushroom trends will start popping up in Western Canada, and then like filter down and across the country. Kombucha, same thing. Bars, like it all kind of flowed through California for a certain degree. It's kind of moved around, but you'll see that trend across like the Western United States, California, that type of thing, Western Canada. This is pretty interesting. So 70%, this is now diving into more of the retail landscape, 76% of the grocery market share is held by 5 retailers. So it's very different than the US market, where the most share a retailer would have, I think it's like 9% or 12%. I think it's quite low. I don't know, Francis, you might have a number on like what Kroger or Albertsons has in terms of market share, but it's not consolidated like the Canadian market. The big call out here is 82% of the ACV is HQ'd in Ontario. So when you're launching a product, a brand into Canada, you have to take that into consideration, right? Loblaw's head office, Metro, Sobeys, all these all the decisions are being made in Ontario at these Ontario HQ. So, and then they have national distribution, right? So you have to make sure you're working with a partner or focusing on the Ontario market to really capitalize on the uniqueness of this consolidated market. And then the population one, I think Francis already, it might be off by a few percent, but So Canadian retailers on the radar for early stage brands, or you have it over on the left-hand side. This one, Francis, you might have new data, but I just noticed that Costco is now #2 in terms of ACV in the market. So that's pretty new news for us.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, #2. So extremely important. Although if you're an emerging brand trying to launch into the market, you're probably not launching in Costco.
You'd
You
be
might.
surprised, Kyle. Like my visit last week. Sorry, I forgot to mention, Daniel. I do go to Costco. There's a lot of brands, like
I've
small
been
brands out
noticing
there.
it too. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But historically, it's not something Marsham or we would suggest. It's higher risk. You got to create a new pack size. It's a little bit unique, but when you look at it from a holistic perspective, it's such a brand builder. It drives a lot of traffic. There's a lot of trips. It makes a lot of sense. However, and not a lot of brands, and we've seen horror stories with some of our brands where they've gone to Costco first, and then you disrupt the rest of the market because of price point and that type of thing. We've actually seen Loblaws remove a brand out of their stores because of that we disrupted their pricing at Costco. This was 10 years ago. So you got to be really careful about the nuances of, because we're consolidated, if you're doing something at Sobeys, it can really impact your Loblaws business and whatever. So you have to look at that. Left-hand side just shows you all the banners that fall under Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro. It's a massive part of the market. And then over on the map, this is where I'd really focus my time for a lot of brands on this call is, nurturing relationships with Whole Foods, Ambrosia, Longo's, Farm Boy. You'll notice Longo's and Farm Boy are owned by Empire, by the Sobeys conglomerate, but you can do regional business with them at separate buying groups. Right, so really focusing on that natural independent channel. I'll go through it in the go-to-market because that's really what we suggest, depending on a few nuances. And then really Western Canada, you got your Choices Market, which is a fantastic partner to launch with in that market if you're more in the better for you space. Thrifties, Nature's Fair, Country Grocer, like these are really good players for emerging brands that when you launch with, depending on the distributor, you want to be in those stores probably before you go to the big guys. But like I said, when I look at go-to-market, there's some nuances. If you have a lot of capital, if you have a strong marketing support, if you're, Logan and Prime or your Mr. Beast and Feastables, like the game changes a little bit.
I just want to highlight for everyone how useful of a slide this is. This is based off like Kyle's lifetime of experience, just to even tell you which of these retailers are good early targets for you. That's what is over on the map. Like, okay, yeah, if you want to get into Canada, these are the ones that are going to make the most sense for you. That's probably a combination of like, they're a good retailer. They also are interested in talking to early brands. It could be a good investment for you. So thank you, Kyle. This is a great one.
I would even sometimes we'll, launch a market in the launch a brand in the market, and we'll look at, a few of these as kind of those lighthouse accounts. So it'll be like, who can make the biggest impact in the market, not just from a velocity volume perspective, but who can create the most noise in terms of visibility. Longo's fantastic partner. They're doing some amazing things from a display perspective, right? Where you can make a lot of noise. It's not necessarily going to, create a lot of volume, maybe, hit your minimums if you're coming over the border, but a fantastic customer. Whole Foods does amazing things, right? They're national, but you can manage them and launch from a regional basis. But yeah, these are like, if I was to launch a brand right away, I'd go to all of these customers. At the same time, I'd be building out like a pipeline go-to-market plan for Loblaws, Sobeys, and Metro at the same time, taking into consideration there's listing fees, program costs, and all of that. The risk tolerance up over there is significant. So that's like, this is like almost a 1, 2, 3, 5-year plan on this map. Channel coverage. This is just how we would break down the channels. Reporting and data might show differently, but when we're planning out go-to-market, when we're planning out budgets, like we're looking at grocery, we're segmenting out natural and independence, gas convenience, right? And then you have your food service, but a lot of your food service can service gas convenience, e-commerce, club wholesale, drug mass. And then we really look at our distributors as a separate standalone management of how we bring brands to market. This one I actually wrote down a lot of notes from Francis's presentation, but in terms of market trends, massive channel shifting, right? Discount. If you do research from mid last year, Loblaws transitioning a lot of their stores to no frills, right? Same with Metro going to food basics. Like there's this huge shift in the Canadian market to discount. And then obviously consumers are shifting to discount. The big thing that I saw, I don't know if I took my eyes off the deck, Francis, for a few seconds, but 50% of consumers are shopping on promotion in Canada. Well, in the US, I think it's roughly in the 25% range. So we like promotion and we're shopping discount. So when you're going to market and you're looking at how to get exposure, how to build a brand, it's tough because going into discount is never your first route, never your first retailer, right? And it's extremely difficult. Shelf space is a little bit more difficult. You don't have the volume. So you got to get scrappy and you got to look at those natural food stores, independents to build that business. Private label and loyalty are growing significantly, right? If you walked stores 2 years ago and compared it to today, private label is everywhere, right? There's a private label competitor. So build that into your sales pitches, right? If you know there's a private label across the country, why is your premium product, how is it going to stand alone and drive conversion, right? There's an argument to be made with private label versus premium brand. And then loyalty. I would support a lot of loyalty, even with the smaller guys who have, small loyalty programs. If you're doing something special with Loblaws, because you're gonna have to do business with them at some point, their PC Optimum loyalty program reaches 18 million people. Figure out ways to tap into those loyalty programs early on. It's a little bit lower cost than doing like big end caps and that type of thing. So there's some nuances there. And then consumer trends, right? It's expensive to be Canadian. It's just outright expensive. So it's an impacting groceries, right? Categories are down, things are down, right? Wallets aren't getting stretched as far, basket size is down, right? We're making more trips. We're trying to get scrappy with every dollar, and it's impacting market retail across the board. So you got to take that into consideration when you're launching here and when you're having those conversations with retailers. So this is the fun stuff. There's probably a fourth one. And I can get into it a little bit, but the 3 ways, like we'll analyze a brand, there's 3 ways we'll go to market, right? And I use Cliff Bar as the example, right? You're scrappy, you're going to every independent store, you're building the base, you're working with a regional distributor, you're going one door at a time and you're building it up, and it takes a long time. It could take a few years for you to really build that business. You can obviously speed it up now with how fast the market moves, but that's a regional model. Right? Lower margin, you're going to be able to compress margin across the board. The retailer is going to work on a lower margin. The distributor is going to work on a lower margin. But you're focusing on velocity. You're going to demo at all these stores. You're going to really, really focus on velocity. Volume isn't going to be a huge thing, right? You're going to build a couple $100,000 6-figure business with that model. Number 2 is that national, natural, independent play, right? You're going to work with a national distributor, or you're going to work with a few regional ones. I like the regional play because you can, compress margin and have those conversations. Usually go through with the national distributor. You can't have those conversations, or they're so big that, they kind of demand it. If you're not working with a partner that knows they can ask those questions, you might, be getting into, situations where you're paying a lot more for services. Continued focus on velocity. It's a little low cost. There's no listing fees. It's still much very, 50% off, free fill. You can build a sizable business there without going to Save on Foods, without going to Loblaws, Sobeys, etc. However, you're always building that out in the back of your head. How am I going to go there? Because you're going to build up cash reserve to pay for listing fees or raise money for listing fees and everything like that. Just so you know, $16,000 a SKU in natural value for listing fees at Loblaws. Right? You might not recoup that money in your first year, right? Plus trade dollars, plus programs, plus all this stuff, that deduction's coming off. You're not making any money yet, right? So you really got to build the base and the foundation to give it a go in the Canadian market. The third one is go big, right? You're going to go national, you're going to go conventional, you're going to go gas convenience, you're going to do all this stuff at this, right time, at the same time. You got millions of dollars to invest, you got influencers, you got marketing. That doesn't happen, right? If you can't, it's happening more often than you think, though. There's a lot of brands that have built their brands off the back of influencers and social media. So they've kind of flipped the game on its head, right? They can go to a Loblaws, Sobeys and be like, hey, like, this is what we're doing. We got this celebrity behind us. We got these 2 influencers. They'll come up, they'll do some stuff. You kind of can create this momentum and excitement with the retailer to leverage negotiations for lower listing fees, lower cost of doing business, but it's very rare and it's a little bit tricky. Yeah, so those are kind of the three main ones.
Kyle, probably sometimes you see like a combo, right? Like, hey, maybe I want to start this thing out. Maybe I go hard in one geography for a year or two, like start building up some traction. Like, okay,
Oh yeah,
maybe now I'm ready
100%.
to then try the like a nice natural that's across some of the regions.
Very, very good point. If you're a small brand entering the market, you're going the regional route. You're actually going through these stages, 1, 2, 3. If you start at the regional approach, then you're going national, then you're going big, right? You're going to launch. And the evolution of this is once you build a significant base, you can remove a distributor layer and go direct to the retailer's warehouse, right? So that happens a lot. That happened, 15 years ago. A lot of the brands in our portfolio were asked to go direct by Loblaws. There was a consolidation of the broker world. And a lot of these brands moved away from their distributor model. You just removed a complete layer from your value chain, right? So that is another option, right? Number 4 is you go direct to store, you're in their warehouse. But then you have to have the scale on the other end to manage it, right? Because it's a lot more work. Now you're managing deductions, you're the vendor of record, you need legal account. Like there's a lot more meat to handle. But yeah, 100% is you go through these stages in this order. Distributor overview, right? If you were to, follow the regional or national or direct distribution, those are some of the key regional ones that, I personally work with on a regular basis. There's a lot of them. I just put a few up there. They're great partners. National, right? These are the 4 key ones: Tree of Life, Unify, John Luke and Neil, and Purity Life. Yeah, pros to the above one. Obviously I said that already. You can compress margin. You can work with them a little bit better. High touch, right? Which is nice when you're just starting out. You can book meetings with them. You can strategize about business development. They're going to nurture their relationship. Once you get into the national strategy, you're in the big leagues. They don't have time for you. They're managing thousands of SKUs, right? It's a little bit more difficult to get face time, although Unify, they have incubator and up next programs that kind of cater to that, but then you're with a national guy paying higher fees with a regional strategy. So you just have to have somebody that can like help you navigate that relationship, I would say, because it's beneficial. We have a lot of brands that do the up next and it's very, very beneficial. It's just we support it heavily.
Kyle, in your experience, like, okay, if somebody's working with you guys, probably you guys help a lot to get them in touch with some of the distributors. If you're a new brand, you're trying to expand into Canada, how are you going to be able to reach out to some of these guys? Like hit them on LinkedIn, submit through their website, try to meet them at trade shows, try to get a direct connection to one of them, try to get somebody to introduce you to one of them. Like what? Yeah, I know sometimes it's like you get the retailer and then they connect you to the distributor.
You call me, call a broker. No, I'm serious. Right?
I'll give you Kyle's cell phone number. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can have it if you want. I think I put it on the last slide, so I might delete it right now just in case. No, but seriously, they get so much inbound that they struggle, right? We struggle to push through new product listings and that type of thing, and we're doing a ton of business with them. So at the end of the day, it comes down to relationships, right? If there's like a few pillars that you need to focus on if you're entering the market, relationships, right? Go to the show. If you're unsure about doing business in Canada, come to CHFA West in April, come to CHFA East in Toronto, and just start networking. Shoot me a message, shoot Francis a message, and meet these people in person. And then you'll have, 10x more chance of getting your product into distribution. The other thing is regional, national, the timeline to getting your products listed. National, like I've done, just recently, it could take 6 months from you presenting, getting them samples, doing all the paperwork to like having a PO, right? You might have just missed category reviews. You might have just missed, your full year basically. Right now you're thinking, January 1 when you can actually do stuff, next year, right? It gets a little dicey once you start like at that scale, but regional, you could be up and running in a month. Right. So if you want to move a little bit faster, and then the direct distribution one is quite interesting. That's like a 3P model. you know, they typically don't do DSD, so you would have to maybe have landed goods in Canada. They maybe service the big guys, and then they would maybe work with a distributor. So it's kind of a hybrid model. I could have a whole presentation on the direct distribution 3PL model that it works in Canada. Happy to take that on another call if you reach out. But yeah, all of these partners on this slide are fantastic. And if you need an introduction, just let me know.
Cool. Francis, I'm just wondering, just based off, you know, all the data and stuff that you're seeing in the market, having seen a lot of this go-to-market stuff around the retailers and stuff, any thoughts or reactions, or does this pretty much ring true with the kind of data that you're seeing?
Totally. It's super interesting to listen to Kyle talk about this. I'm less familiar with all of this. Listen, with the listing fees, you've got to make the right decisions. All of what Kyle mentioned is totally bang on. So, yep, there's so much competition. The only thing I would maybe add that's different is that playing the local game, which is probably not going to be useful for an American brand, but the retailers right now have special programs to push for like local brands. Going to be interesting to see if there's going to be a made in Canada play after the tariffs or
100%.
this
I would, 100%. That is like, if I would have known so many Canadians were on this call, there would have been 2 slides on the local programs that they all offer. Right? Every retailer has a great local program. Sobeys is well known for what they're doing. I think, Daniel, you've met Sherry Evans and maybe done some stuff with her, but she's doing exceptional stuff in Ontario. They have a whole local buying group across the country. If you're Canadian, local is the way to go, right? You're getting perks. It's the cost of doing business is a little bit lower. You know, you're getting the support. 100% coming from the US or elsewhere, you know, you're not getting that much love.
Feel free to add those in to the one we send out.
Yeah, no,
sure,
for
people
sure.
will be excited to see that.
For sure. We tend to be treated like the 51st state with American brands launching, right? You don't get as much love. It's kind of this interesting relationship, right? They launch into Canada, they hire a broker, and then they, you know, there's some of that, you know, you get forgotten or whatever. Like had a conversation just a few days ago about a marketing campaign, big marketing campaign in the US, and, you know, no support, no love for the Canadians, but
yeah,
we're always pushing for it.
Well, I know we have one slide left with you, Kyle, but I'll
Yeah.
also just put in a quick plug, which sometimes we do cool stuff with Francis and the NIQ team in Canada. So Kyle had mentioned CHFA. We did the Toronto East Show with the NIQ team. So we were at their booth, like spinning a big fun wheel, giving out some data from them. And we had the forager from Whole Foods for Ontario and Washington State and another region there, Grant. And it was amazing. And he actually did pick up some brands from that. So definitely stay tuned. If you're not in our Canada channel in the Startup CPG Slack, you can join at startupcpg.com. Stay tuned because I think we'll be doing a bunch more fun stuff as well, trying to connect you guys with some distribution opportunities.
Yeah, can't wait. I'll be there.
All right. And yeah, Kyle throws a pretty good party also.
You guys can all come. Like, how many people are on the call right now?
Yeah, now we're at like 81. It was at about 95 before.
Yeah, nice. Common costs associated with it. So, you know, distributor margin, 25, 30%. Natural, it's a little bit more, like we've seen, you know, upwards of 45%. Broker fees are pretty standard, right? You know, that you can get as low as 2,500 to 7,500, I've heard. You know, we're negotiable. We work maybe around the middle. 5 to 7% commission, right? Is generally, depending, supplements are a little bit higher. Field merchandising, you know, is a good investment early on. Marketing, you know, is more expensive in national conventional than it is in natural, and then club, similar to the US. But what time is it? Yes. And then, you know, just lastly, if you want to, I put together a discount code for anybody that wants to check out To-Do. I can do a demo whenever you want. It really came out of passion to help, you know, small, medium-sized food and beverage brands. So go check it out. You know, there's a discount there if you feel like you want to use it. I did put my direct line, so don't take it down, I guess. It's going to get a lot of text messages. Marsham, you know, if you're interested in the brokerage, learning more about these strategies, you know, we have a number of services that cater to, you know, small and emerging brands. So it's not like you got to come with us. We charge you crazy amounts of money. We, you know, can gauge the market and help, you know, build out that go-to-market strategy. And, you know, you don't have to come and invest too heavily. And then elbows out is marketing, merchandising. So you can hit us from any of those, and happy to talk about Canada. I love it. If you're at CHFA, come say hi. And then, thanks Startup CPG, and thank you, Francis.
All right, amazing, cool. Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for all the amazing engagement that we saw. There were a couple of questions that came in. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everything. It kind of moves fast and furious. So I saw one that came in, like what would be an ideal timeline to achieve profitability. I think that's going to be really specific to your brand and your budget. And when do you need to hit profitability? Are you trying to raise money? But man, these fees are real, right? So I think the main thing is just to know what all of them are. And that last slide from Kyle can be incredibly helpful, so you can build your financial model and understand when are you going to be profitable based on all of that stuff, and does it fit with the plan that you have. And then I saw another question. What is the perception from Canadian consumers about US brands coming into the market? I don't know if Kyle, do they really register it if you have the right packaging and everything? Do they notice where stuff is from, or is there a perception one way or the other?
Not really. Like majority of the brands on shelf are US manufactured, right? It's I think the biggest conversation is around not having enough of the US products in Canada, right? You go to the US and you're like, wow, there's so many different flavors, there's so many different brands. Like, why don't we have this in Canada? And it's because it's the regulatory around launching in Canada, the cost of doing business, bilingual packaging, right? There's not a lot of barriers in terms of that when launching, right? I think we welcome it.
Cool. And Samantha put in a pretty interesting comment that she thinks a lot of people are excited because they often can't get the products that they see online, so you can actually get them in the stores then. So that's pretty interesting. So I'm going to wrap us up, guys. I just want to say thank you again to NielsenIQ for making this possible. They support so much of the fun that we get to have as a community, and especially just the way that they engage with us to educate everybody. I hope you guys all appreciate, this is a special thing. Francis worked really hard on this. We worked really hard to make this happen. We're so lucky to have Kyle come in and just drop all of that knowledge. It would be so hard for all of us to get that. So I hope all of you can join me in saying thank you to them, maybe in the chat. Thank you. I see all the love coming here. And definitely, if you're in Canada, stay tuned, because we'll be doing more events. We are doing some already in Toronto. And then there are more to come, especially as we go deeper into the trade shows. So expect to see me more at the CHFA shows specifically, and other stuff to be announced as well. So last word, Francis, anything else from you?
I just want to thank you for this first occasion to talk about Canada. And thanks, Kyle, for being part of this. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Daniel.
All right. Just remember, you can connect with Francis and the team. I dropped the link here, and otherwise, see you guys on the Slack. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.